Chosen one. I need you to quiet your mind for a moment and stop fighting the tension in your chest. Do not push it away. Do not try to analyze it. Just acknowledge it. That heavy, frustrating pressure you have been carrying is not random. It has been sitting there like an unanswered question, like a locked door you keep knocking on even though your knuckles are bruised. For months, maybe longer, you have been moving through your days with the unsettling feeling that something should have shifted by now. You have prayed, planned, prepared, positioned yourself, and pressed forward with discipline and faith. Yet progress has felt unnatural, almost resisted, as if an invisible force was holding you back just when you were ready to accelerate. You kept telling yourself to try harder, to believe harder, to push harder. And still, nothing seemed to move the way it should. The opportunities stalled. The doors closed at the last second. The momentum you built dissolved without explanation. And in the quiet moments when no one was watching, you wondered if you had done something wrong to deserve this kind of stagnation. You questioned whether heaven had quietly disqualified you. You feared that maybe the silence meant rejection. But listen carefully, because this is the turning point of your understanding. The heavy break was never punishment. It was protection. You have been pressing the gas pedal of your life with determination and faith. But what you did not realize is that a spiritual parking brake had been deliberately engaged. You felt the engine revving. You felt the desire. You felt the readiness. But forward motion would not come. And because you could not see the mechanism holding you in place, you assumed the problem was you. You assumed your faith was insufficient, or your preparation incomplete. In reality, there was a danger ahead that you could not see. There was an unseen trap positioned directly in the path you were trying so desperately to run toward. If that brake had not been locked, you would have accelerated straight into something designed to harm your future. The delay was not a denial of your worth. It was a shield over your destiny. The pause was not heaven punishing you for imperfection. It was heaven preserving you from premature exposure. What felt like abandonment was actually strategic concealment. What felt like rejection was divine restraint. And today, something has shifted. A verdict has been issued. The accusations that hovered over your timeline have been reviewed and dismissed. The case that tried to justify your delay has been overturned. There has been a legal movement in the spiritual realm concerning your life, and the decision is final. You are cleared. Not because you suddenly became flawless. Not because you reached some imaginary standard of perfection, but because a sovereign decree has overridden every argument that tried to block your progress. The brake that held you in place has been released. The stop sign that confused you has been uprooted. But here is what you must understand. Being cleared to move forward requires understanding why you were held back in the first place. If you step into this new season still believing you were punished, you will carry insecurity into opportunity. If you rush ahead without recalibrating your mind and nervous system, you will sabotage the very blessing you prayed for. So stay with me. I am going to reveal the hidden reason behind your delay in greater detail. I am going to show you how the protection operated what it prevented, and why the timing of this release matters so deeply. And beyond that, I will give you the precise tools you need to cross this threshold without fear, without self-sabotage, and without dragging the trauma of the waiting room into the promised land. This is not just encouragement. This is alignment. This is understanding the strategy of your pause so you can walk forward with clarity instead of confusion. The heavy brake was never punishment. It was divine intelligence guarding your future. And now that the road ahead has been cleared, you are being invited to move not in desperation, but in wisdom, strength, and full spiritual authorization. You have replayed the closed doors in your mind more times than you can count, trying to decode what you missed, what you misread, what you miscalculated. The job opportunity that looked perfectly aligned with your skills and calling suddenly dissolved at the final interview. The relationship that felt like answered prayer shifted without warning, turning cold just when you began to feel secure. The financial breakthrough that seemed within reach stalled contracts, delayed payments, postponed deals, quietly withdrawn. Each moment felt personal. Each setback felt like a verdict on your worth. You told yourself that maybe you were not ready, maybe you were not disciplined enough, maybe you were being taught another lesson in patience. And on the surface, that explanation seemed reasonable. Growth often requires waiting. Character is refined in delay. But what if the frustration you experienced was not simply about development, but about interception? What if what you interpreted as failure was actually divine interference? There is a deeper layer beneath those blocked opportunities and failed relationships, a layer that you could not see while standing inside the fog. Progress was not slowed because you were unqualified. Progress was frozen because acceleration at that moment would have carried you directly into a trap calibrated for your destruction. You were not standing in front of a random closed door. You were standing inches away from a pressure-sensitive spiritual landmine. One more step, one more signature, one more emotional investment, and the damage could have set you back years. The door did not close to frustrate you. It closed to protect you from something toxic embedded in the environment beyond it. And the most unsettling part is this: the trap was designed to look like favor. It was disguised as opportunity. It was wrapped in validation. It appealed to your desire to finally move forward. That is why it hurt so deeply when it collapsed. Because you were not just losing a possibility. You were losing what felt like proof that you were finally seen and chosen. But heaven could see what you could not. The spiritual architecture behind that situation was unstable. The motives of certain people were misaligned. The system itself was compromised. So your timeline was interrupted. Your momentum was paused. And from your perspective, it felt like punishment. Yet from a higher vantage point, it was precision. To understand this more clearly, consider the moment recorded in the book of Exodus 14, when the Israelites stood trapped between the Red Sea and the advancing Egyptian army. On one side was water they could not cross. On the other side was an enemy they could not outrun. Panic rose. Fear escalated. But before the miracle of the parted sea occurred, something else happened. A pillar of cloud moved and positioned itself between the Israelites and the Egyptians. Most people read that passage as a simple barrier, a supernatural wall to prevent attack. But look closer. The cloud did more than block the enemy's access. It also blocked the Israelites' view. It concealed how terrifyingly close the threat actually was. If they had seen the full proximity of danger breathing down their necks, their faith could have shattered under the weight of visible fear. So the cloud functioned as both protection and concealment. It shielded them physically, and it shielded them psychologically. In the same way, you were placed inside a cloud of delay. You could not see the conversations happening behind closed doors. You could not see the manipulation forming in the background. You could not see the hidden liabilities attached to that opportunity. You were frustrated by the fog, but the fog was mercy. The fog prevented you from reacting emotionally to information you were not equipped to process. It prevented you from making impulsive decisions out of panic or pride. It gave heaven time to dismantle what was being constructed against you. Because make no mistake, there was warfare around your advancement. There were forces that did not want you stepping into visibility. There were dynamics that would have drained your strength, distorted your focus, and compromised your integrity. And you were spared from witnessing the full intensity of that opposition. God shielded you not only from the trap itself, but from the trauma of seeing how close it came to activating. Imagine how destabilizing it would have been to discover after the fact that the relationship you mourned was laced with betrayal you never suspected. Imagine realizing that the business deal you cried over would have entangled you in legal complications that damaged your reputation. Imagine discovering that the environment you longed to enter was internally collapsing. The cloud spared you that shock. It allowed you to grieve what you thought you lost without being crushed by what you were actually saved from. And now something is shifting. The cloud that once surrounded you is thinning. The fog that obscured your understanding is beginning to lift. Not because you forced clarity, but because the threat has been neutralized. The trap that was laid has failed. The landmine has been disarmed. The environment that was once toxic has either collapsed on its own or been restructured beyond your path. The reason you feel a subtle change in your spirit right now is because the atmosphere ahead of you is no longer contaminated. What was once unsafe is now cleared. What was once hostile is now neutralized. You are not being pushed forward recklessly. You are being released strategically. And the frustration you carried for months is about to be reframed as evidence of divine intelligence at work. You were not delayed because you were disqualified. You were delayed because you were valuable. Protection is always proportional to assignment. The greater the calling, the tighter the shield. And now that the shield is repositioning, you must resist the temptation to interpret the past season as wasted time. It was not wasted. It was guarded. Every closed door was a rerouting. Every failed connection was a filtration. Every financial slowdown was insulation from future loss. The cloud did its job. It blocked what needed blocking. It concealed what needed concealing. And now that the danger has passed, the same God who restrained your movement is inviting you to step forward with new awareness. The hidden trap behind the closed door is no longer hidden because it no longer exists. It has been dismantled in the dark. And you are standing at the edge of a cleared path, not because you forced your way through resistance, but because resistance itself has been removed. While the trap was being dismantled in the dark, and the cloud was shielding you from danger, you could not see something else was unfolding in a realm you rarely consider but deeply feel, and that was the courtroom atmosphere surrounding your destiny. You sensed it in the subtle heaviness that lingered even after the doors closed. You felt it in the strange guilt that surfaced without clear cause. There was a narrative being whispered against you, a quiet but persistent accusation that tried to convince you that the delay was justified because of your past, because of your mistakes, because of the moments you doubted, because of the times you almost gave up. The enemy does not always attack through chaos. Sometimes the attack comes through accusation. It comes through memory. It comes through shame. It comes through replaying old failures until they feel like current disqualifications. And for months, while you were waiting and wondering, those accusations were being presented like evidence in a trial. Picture it clearly, not metaphorically, but intentionally. A courtroom, a prosecuting voice standing before a throne listing your flaws, highlighting your inconsistencies, pointing at your secret fears, and saying, "This one is not worthy. This one is not stable. This one will misuse the blessing. Cancel the promotion. deny the advancement. The language of the spirit realm is often legal before it is emotional. Access, authority, and advancement operate on decrees. And the enemy's strategy is to create a case built on your history. Every regret becomes an exhibit. Every misstep becomes a charge. Every delay becomes framed as confirmation that you are not ready. You felt the weight of that accusation even if you could not name it. It is why sometimes you felt blocked even when you were doing everything right. It is why the past tried to attach itself to your present identity. But Scripture gives us a vivid picture of how this courtroom dynamic actually works. In Zechariah chapter 3, Joshua the high priest stands before the angel of the Lord, and Satan is positioned at his right hand to accuse him. Joshua is described as wearing filthy garments. The symbolism is not subtle. His clothing represents imperfection, failure, human limitation. The accuser points at the dirt and implies disqualification. It is a scene of exposure. It is a scene of vulnerability. And if the story ended there, Joshua would remain stained and sidelined. But watch carefully what happens next. God does not enter into debate. He does not argue point by point with the accuser. He does not ask Joshua to defend himself. Instead, a sovereign decree is issued. Take off his filthy garments. Then immediately, see, I have taken away your sin, and I will put rich garments on you. Notice the sequence: removal, replacement, restoration. The accusation is not negotiated. It is overridden. The dirt is not analyzed. It is exchanged. The authority to clothe Joshua does not come from Joshua's perfection. It comes from God's decision. And this is the pattern that has just unfolded over your life. The accusations were real in the sense that they referenced real moments. You are not perfect. You have stumbled. You have doubted. You have hesitated. But perfection was never the qualification for your calling. The enemy's mistake was assuming that your clearance depended on your record. It does not. It depends on decree. And a decree has been issued. The gavel has fallen. The case has been reviewed. The arguments have been heard. And the final decision was not based on your worst moment, but on divine intention. You have been reclothed. The spiritual garments that once felt stained with insecurity have been replaced with authority. The shame that lingered has been stripped away. The hesitation that grew from old failures has been legally dismissed. This is why something inside you feels different, even if nothing around you has visibly changed yet. It is because clearance happens before manifestation. The legal right to move forward is established before the door visibly opens. The enemy no longer has a legal claim to block your path. The accusations that once felt loud have lost jurisdiction. You are not advancing because you proved them wrong. You are advancing because heaven declared you qualified. And this is critical for you to understand as you step into this next season. If you believe you are moving forward because you finally fixed yourself, you will constantly fear relapse. If you believe you are moving forward because you finally became flawless, you will live under pressure to maintain an impossible standard. But if you understand that your clearance is rooted in decree, you will move with gratitude instead of anxiety. You will steward the blessing rather than obsess over protecting it from imaginary disqualification. The spiritual courtroom has closed your case. The verdict is not pending. It is final. You are officially cleared and free to move forward. Not conditionally cleared, not temporarily cleared, officially cleared. The stop sign that once felt immovable has been uprooted at its foundation. The barrier that resisted your progress has been legally dismantled. And here is what must anchor you now. When God overrides an accusation, no secondary voice can reinstate it. When a sovereign decree is issued, it stands. You may still hear echoes of the old narrative. You may still feel moments of insecurity trying to rise, but those are residual whispers, not active verdicts. The ruling has already been made. You are not on probation. You are not under review. You are released. And because you are released, you must stop subconsciously punishing yourself for a season that has already been closed. The courtroom lights have dimmed. The accuser has been silenced. The garments have been changed. And you are being invited to step out of the chamber not as someone barely tolerated, but as someone fully authorized. That is the difference between surviving delay and stepping into destiny. You are not sneaking into your next chapter, hoping no one notices your flaws. You are walking in under official clearance. The spiritual paperwork has been stamped. The objection has been denied. The advancement has been approved. And now the only thing left is for you to accept what has already been declared. You are free to move forward. Now that the verdict has been issued and your clearance has been declared, you would expect to feel nothing but relief, momentum, and boldness. Yet, what you are actually experiencing is something far more complex and quietly unsettling. Your spirit feels released, but your body feels hesitant. Your soul senses green light, but your nervous system is still bracing for impact. This is the strange contradiction you are standing inside right now. You prayed for movement. You asked for breakthrough. You cried out for doors to open. And now that the path is clear, you feel a flicker of resistance rising from within your own chest. It is subtle but undeniable. It is not doubt in God. It is tension in your body. There is an internal conflict between spiritual authorization and biological conditioning. For months, maybe years, you have lived in a state of prolonged warfare. Not necessarily dramatic chaos every day, but sustained uncertainty, repeated disappointment, emotional ambushes, unexpected reversals. Your system adapted to survive. You learned to lower expectations. You learned to anticipate obstacles. You learned to guard your excitement before it could be crushed. That adaptation was wise for the season you were in. It protected you from emotional collapse. But now that the war has shifted, your body has not yet received the update. You have been operating in what neuroscience identifies as a high beta brain state. High beta is the frequency of stress, vigilance, rapid thought loops, and constant environmental scanning. It is the mental posture of someone preparing for threat. In high beta, your brain is asking one question repeatedly. What could go wrong next? Even when nothing is visibly wrong, the body remains alert, ready to defend. This state is helpful in short bursts when facing real danger, but prolonged exposure to it wires the nervous system into hypervigilance. You may not consciously think you are in danger anymore, but your biology still behaves as if you are. So when the clearance comes, when the opportunity surfaces, when the path opens, instead of leaping forward, your body hesitates. It is not rebellion. It is conditioning. Your spirit is shouting march, but your nervous system is whispering hide. And if you misinterpret that hesitation as lack of faith, you will create unnecessary shame around something that is actually neurological. The internal tension you feel is not proof that you are unready. It is proof that you survived something intense. You have been living in survival mode for so long that calm feels foreign, ease feels suspicious, acceleration feels unstable. You became familiar with struggle. You became accustomed to delay. You learned how to endure disappointment. but you did not have to practice sustaining success. And this is where a deeper truth surfaces, one that may surprise you. You are not afraid of failure anymore. Failure became familiar. You know how to survive it. You know how to recover from it. You know how to rebuild after it. What unsettles you now is the possibility of success. Because success carries visibility. Success carries responsibility. Success carries expectation. When you imagine stepping fully into your new season, there is a part of you that feels exposed. What if I cannot handle it? What if the weight is heavier than I anticipate? What if I step onto this new platform and everyone sees that I am not as strong as they think? That whisper is not random. It is the final psychological barrier standing between clearance and embodiment. It is what modern language calls imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome does not appear when you are unqualified. It appears when you are stretching beyond the identity you have grown used to inhabiting. For so long you identified as the one waiting, the one striving, the one almost there. That identity, though painful, became predictable. But stepping into someone who is chosen, elevated advancing, requires dismantling the old narrative you carried about yourself. And dismantling identity feels vulnerable. When imposter thoughts rise, they often sound convincing. You are not experienced enough. You are not polished enough. You just got lucky. You are going to be exposed. But notice the timing of these thoughts. They spike right before breakthrough. They intensify right before transition. They swell the night before a new chapter opens. That pattern alone reveals their function. They are not random fears. They are psychological echoes of prolonged survival mode colliding with impending elevation. And here is what you must understand deeply: trembling at the threshold does not mean you are unworthy of crossing it. It means you understand the magnitude of what you are stepping into. Reckless people rush toward power without fear because they do not comprehend its weight. The fact that you feel the weight tells you that you are not careless. You are aware. And awareness is not weakness. It is maturity. But maturity must now be paired with recalibration. Your nervous system needs permission to exit survival mode. It needs evidence that the war is actually over. It needs new experiences of safety in forward movement. If you ignore this internal contradiction, you may unconsciously sabotage the very opportunities that were cleared for you. Not because you want to fail, but because your body is still protecting you from imagined threat. You might procrastinate. You might overanalyze. You might downplay your gifts. You might shrink your presence to avoid being seen. These behaviors are not moral failures. They are protective reflexes. But protection that lingers beyond the season of danger becomes limitation. The clearance has been issued spiritually, but integration must happen biologically. You must allow your body to catch up with your spirit. This is why awareness matters. The moment you recognize that your hesitation is rooted in survival wiring, rather than divine disapproval, shame loses its grip. You can breathe differently. You can step forward gradually, instead of forcing yourself violently into a role you have not emotionally adjusted to. The strange contradiction of spirit cleared and body afraid is not a sign that the verdict was premature. It is a reminder that transformation happens in layers. Legal clearance is instant. Identity embodiment is progressive. And you are in the space between decree and full confidence. Do not interpret this space as regression. Interpret it as recalibration. Your brain is learning that it is safe to expand. Your nervous system is learning that visibility does not automatically equal threat. Your heart is learning that success does not automatically equal loss. And as this integration unfolds, the fear that once felt paralyzing will soften into reverent awareness. The imposter voice will quiet. The high beta vigilance will ease. The survival reflex will relax its grip. And what will remain is not reckless ambition, but steady authority. You are not failing because you feel afraid. You are adjusting because you have been released. The contradiction is temporary. The clearance is permanent. And as your biology aligns with your spirit, you will discover that the fear you felt at the starting line was never a stop sign. It was simply the final echo of a season that has already ended. Now that you understand the contradiction between spiritual release and physical hesitation, you must confront a deeper layer of what has actually been happening within you, because not every barrier you have faced was spiritual in origin, and not every resistance you feel now is rooted in opposition from outside forces. Some of what you are navigating is biological warfare, not in the dramatic sense of attack, but in the quiet sense of conditioning. There is a crucial distinction between spiritual barriers and biological ones. A spiritual barrier involves accusation, opposition, or restriction operating beyond your visible awareness. Those barriers require divine intervention, and they have been addressed. But a biological barrier is different. It is the residue of prolonged stress stored in your nervous system. It is the imprint of survival mode etched into your brain chemistry. It is the aftershock of waiting under pressure for so long that your body adapted to tension as its default state. During the waiting season, you endured more than simple delay. You endured uncertainty, emotional strain, and repeated cycles of hope rising and collapsing. Even when you maintained faith outwardly, your nervous system absorbed the impact of each disappointment. Every time you prepared for a breakthrough, and it stalled, your body registered that as threat. Every time you opened your heart, and it was not reciprocated, your system tightened. Every time you positioned yourself for advancement, and the door closed, your brain logged it as instability. Over time, this accumulation of micro-stress shaped your internal wiring. Trauma does not always require catastrophe. Sometimes it is built through repetition. The repetition of bracing. The repetition of adjusting expectations downward. The repetition of guarding excitement before it can be crushed. And your nervous system did what it was designed to do. It protected you. It heightened awareness. It increased vigilance. It shifted your brain into high beta frequency. High beta is the brainwave state associated with stress alertness and constant scanning for potential danger. In high beta, thoughts move quickly. Muscles remain slightly tense. The mind searches for the next problem before it appears. This state is not sinful. It is not weak. It is adaptive. It helps humans survive immediate threats. But the problem arises when high beta becomes chronic, when vigilance becomes baseline, when stress becomes normal. In that state, even when external danger subsides, the internal alarm does not automatically turn off. Your body continues scanning for threat long after the threat has been removed. This is why you can be spiritually cleared and still feel unsettled, because your nervous system has not yet received confirmation that it is safe to relax. And this is where the concept of brainwave frequencies becomes profoundly relevant. The human brain operates across different wave patterns depending on state. Beta is associated with active thinking and stress. Alpha corresponds to calm awareness. Theta, however, is something deeper. Theta is the state where intuition sharpens, creativity flows, healing accelerates, and insight emerges without strain. It is the frequency often associated with deep meditation, prayerful stillness, and moments when clarity feels downloaded rather than constructed. Ancient mystics did not use neurological terminology, but they understood the experience. They withdrew into silence not to escape the world, but to access a deeper state of perception. Modern neuroscience has now mapped what they practiced. Theta is the bridge between conscious effort and subconscious alignment. It is the state where fear loosens and wisdom surfaces. When you have been trapped in prolonged high beta, access to theta becomes limited. Your mind remains too alert to drop into restorative stillness. Your thoughts race even when you try to pray. Your body tightens even when you try to rest. This is not a spiritual deficiency. It is a biological pattern. And the solution is not condemnation. The solution is recalibration. If the spiritual courtroom cleared you, but your nervous system remains locked in survival mode, you must intentionally guide your biology into alignment with your new reality. You cannot simply command your body to relax. You must retrain it. Just as it learned vigilance through repetition, it must learn safety through repetition. This is why resetting your nervous system is not optional if you intend to walk fully into your cleared season. If you step forward with a dysregulated system, you may sabotage progress, not because you lack faith, but because your body misinterprets expansion as threat. Visibility might feel overwhelming. Responsibility might feel suffocating. Success might feel destabilizing. But if you gradually introduce your system to theta states, if you allow your brain to experience calm clarity consistently, something powerful happens. Your breath slows, your muscles release, your thoughts soften, and in that softened state you become receptive rather than reactive. Theta is not passivity, it is precision. It is the space where intuition becomes accessible without panic. It is where divine direction can be heard without distortion from fear. In theta, you do not chase opportunity anxiously. You discern it clearly. You do not overanalyze every decision. You respond from grounded awareness. The waiting season conditioned your body to brace for impact. The cleared season requires your body to learn how to receive. And receiving demands safety. You cannot fully receive blessing while your nervous system is convinced it must defend against loss. So part of your next assignment is not striving harder spiritually, but cultivating biological safety. This might look like intentional stillness each day. It might involve breathing practices that signal to your vagus nerve that danger has passed. It might include sound frequencies designed to entrain your brain into slower waves. It might simply be creating environments where your body can experience calm without interruption. These are not secular distractions from faith. They are tools that cooperate with design. Your body was created with mechanisms that respond to rhythm, breath, and repetition. When you honor those mechanisms, you are not diminishing spirituality. You are integrating it. The nervous system trap was subtle. It convinced you that tension was necessary. It convinced you that relaxing would make you vulnerable. But the war has shifted. The landmine has been disarmed. The verdict has been issued. And now your body must learn what your spirit already knows. It is safe to move forward. It is safe to expand. It is safe to succeed. Resetting your nervous system is not about chasing mystical experience. It is about removing the internal emergency brake that remained after the spiritual brake was lifted. When beta softens and theta emerges, your mind aligns with your clearance. Your intuition sharpens without anxiety. Your decisions carry calm authority. Your movements become intentional rather than reactive. And in that alignment, you will realize that the final barrier was never external opposition. It was internal tension waiting to be released. As your biology catches up with your spirit, The strange hesitation will dissolve. What remains will not be frantic ambition, but steady confidence. You will not force doors open. You will walk through them with composure. You will not overcompensate for past delay. You will move with clarity rooted in peace, because the true breakthrough was never just about external opportunity. It was about internal regulation. And once your nervous system is aligned with your clearance, nothing inside you will resist the future that has already been declared over your life. Now that you recognize the biological layer of resistance and understand that your hesitation is not spiritual rejection, but nervous system conditioning, the next step is not to force yourself into boldness, but to recalibrate your internal frequency intentionally. This is where the frequency tool for recalibration becomes essential, because awareness alone does not reset the body. Insight opens the door, but repetition rewires the system. For centuries, spiritual seekers understood something intuitively that modern neuroscience is only now mapping. With precision, the mind can be tuned. Just as instruments require adjustment to produce harmony, your brain waves can be guided from stress patterns into restorative ones. This is not mystical fantasy. It is design. Sound rhythm and repetition influence neural activity. Certain tones and frequencies can gently shift the brain from high beta alertness into calmer states such as alpha and theta. When we speak about sacred sound technology, we are not talking about superstition. We are talking about entrainment, the process by which external rhythms influence internal rhythms. Your heart rate synchronizes with music. Your breath adjusts to tempo. Your brain waves respond to patterned sound. If prolonged warfare conditioned your system into hypervigilance, then intentional frequency exposure can guide it back toward stability. This is where tools such as the Genius Wave enter the conversation. The concept is simple but profound. A carefully designed audio frequency engineered to nudge the brain into theta state without years of isolated meditation. Theta is the state where intuition becomes accessible without strain, where insight flows without panic, where the body loosens its grip on threat scanning. In theta, you are not unconscious. You are deeply aware but unburdened by constant tension. The noise quiets. The internal alarm softens. The mind becomes receptive rather than reactive. When you allow a frequency like this to wash over your nervous system for even 7 minutes a day, you are not escaping reality. You are teaching your biology that the war has ended. 7 minutes may sound insignificant compared to the years you spent in stress, but consistency changes architecture. Your brain is plastic. It adapts to repeated input. Just as repeated disappointment trained you to brace, repeated calm can train you to receive. Those 7 minutes are not passive listening sessions. They are declarations of safety. They are signals to your vagus nerve that expansion does not equal danger. They are rehearsals for success without collapse. Imagine what happens when your mind and spirit align before you step into your next chapter. Your spirit has already heard the decree. It knows you are cleared. But if your mind remains trapped in survival mode, it will distort that clarity. You might interpret opportunity as threat. You might perceive visibility as vulnerability. But when your brain softens into theta, your perception changes. You see more clearly. You respond rather than react. You trust discernment without spiraling into overanalysis. Alignment between mind and spirit is not abstract spirituality. It is coherence. It is when your internal systems stop fighting each other. And this coherence matters deeply because stepping into a new season with a dysregulated nervous system is like entering the promised land while still carrying wilderness reflexes. In the wilderness, hypervigilance kept you alive. In the promised land, hypervigilance will exhaust you. In the wilderness, guarding your heart prevented collapse. In the promised land, overguarding will block connection. If you cross into expansion without recalibrating your frequency, you may unintentionally recreate the stress you just escaped. You might overwork to prove you belong. You might isolate to avoid vulnerability. You might sabotage relationships out of unconscious fear of loss. That is why recalibration is not optional. It is stewardship. It is preparation for sustainability. Think about the Israelites again. When they left the wilderness, the challenge was not merely geographic relocation. It was psychological transition. Slavery mentality could follow them even into freedom. In the same way, waiting room mentality can follow you into advancement if you do not consciously release it. Sacred sound technology, such as the Genius Wave, functions as a bridge between seasons. It assists your brain in internalizing the new reality that has already been declared spiritually. When you sit quietly and allow those frequencies to entrain your neural patterns, you are not chasing mystical experience. You are cooperating with design. You are honoring the truth that your body needs time and repetition to adjust to blessing. Over time, something shifts. The constant background tension reduces. Your thoughts slow. Your breathing deepens. Opportunities no longer trigger immediate panic. Instead of bracing, you lean in. Instead of scanning for threat, you scan for alignment. And in that space, decision-making becomes clearer. You do not grab counterfeit opportunities out of impatience. You discern them calmly. You do not entertain ghosts from the past because you are no longer desperate for familiarity. You do not spiral into imposter syndrome because your nervous system is not flooded with cortisol. The recalibrated mind supports the cleared spirit. This alignment is what makes sustainable elevation possible. And here is the warning. You must take seriously, do not rush into your promised land with an unhealed nervous system. Clearance does not cancel conditioning automatically. You must participate in the integration process. If you ignore this step, you may reach the door only to feel paralyzed again. Not because you are disqualified, but because your biology is overwhelmed. But when you take even 7 intentional minutes each day to shift your internal frequency, you are laying a foundation for steady advancement. You are teaching your body that safety and success can coexist. You are reinforcing the decree with physiological evidence. Over time, the strange contradiction dissolves. Spirit cleared and body afraid transforms into spirit and body aligned. And when that alignment solidifies, you do not just step into your new season. You inhabit it with calm authority. You move not as someone trying to outrun fear, but as someone who has retrained fear into awareness. The frequency tool is not magic. It is maintenance. It is partnership between biology and belief. And as you commit to recalibration, you will find that the internal emergency brake that once resisted acceleration no longer exists. Your mind and spirit will move as one. Your nervous system will support what heaven has declared. And you will walk forward not only cleared, but fully coherent, prepared to steward the blessing without self-sabotage. Now that your clearance has been issued and your nervous system is learning how to align with that release, there are operational principles that must guide your movement forward, because freedom without discipline can quietly recreate bondage. Clearance is not merely permission to advance, it is an invitation to advance wisely. And wisdom in this season is structured around 3 rules that will protect your elevation from unnecessary collapse. The first rule unfolds as a firm but loving command: no looking back. When Scripture recounts the rescue of Lot and his family from Sodom in Genesis 19, the instruction given by the angels was direct and urgent escape for your life, and do not look back. On the surface, this seems like a simple physical instruction. But the original Hebrew word used for looking back is nabat, and its meaning carries far more depth than a casual glance. Nabat implies contemplation with longing, observation mixed with attachment, a gaze weighted by regret and desire. Lot's wife did not merely turn her head, she turned her heart. She missed what she was leaving, and in that moment of emotional attachment to a condemned environment, her progress froze. She became a pillar of salt, a symbol of stagnation rooted in nostalgia. This is not a story about punishment for curiosity. It is a warning about emotional ties to what God has removed you from. If you step into your new season while secretly longing for the familiarity of your old one, you will fracture your momentum. Toxic environments do not always appear toxic while you are inside them. Sometimes they feel familiar. Sometimes they feel predictable. But familiarity is not the same as safety, and longing for what nearly destroyed you creates internal conflict that slows advancement. Clearance requires severance, not hatred, not bitterness, but detachment. If you rehearse old conversations, replay old dynamics, or romanticize the very spaces that suffocated your growth, you risk freezing your own progress. The second rule flows naturally from the first and calls you to enter with empty hands. When you leave a season of delay, disappointment, or betrayal, there is a temptation to carry evidence with you. Evidence of how you were wronged. Evidence of how you were overlooked. Evidence of how hard it was. But elevation cannot be occupied while clutching grievance. Releasing the victim mindset does not mean denying that you were hurt. It means refusing to let hurt define your identity. In the wilderness, identifying as the one who endured kept you strong. But in the promised land, that same identity can become weight. The grave clothes of trauma cannot accompany you into the throne room of your next chapter. Grave clothes are the mental narratives that say, I always struggle, I am always overlooked. Nothing works for me. Those narratives may have felt accurate during delay, but they cannot script your future. Entering with empty hands means releasing the need to prove how much you suffered. It means allowing your new identity to form without anchoring it to past pain. You are not dishonoring your journey by letting go of victimhood. You are honoring your growth. When your hands are empty, you can receive. When your identity is unburdened, you can embody elevation without distortion. Walking into advancement without old baggage allows you to move with clarity instead of defensiveness. The third rule then shapes how you carry yourself within this new territory and calls you to adopt silent steps. There is power in quiet movement. When something begins to flourish, premature exposure can invite unnecessary interference. Announcing every plan, broadcasting every open door, sharing every early-stage idea may feel celebratory, but it can dilute focus and invite opposition before stability is established. Moving like a ghost in this next chapter does not mean secrecy rooted in fear. It means strategy rooted in maturity. You no longer need public validation to confirm your worth. You no longer need applause to motivate progress. Let your results speak. Let your fruit testify. There is a difference between confidence and exhibition. Silent steps preserve energy. They allow you to build without distraction. They protect your recalibrated nervous system from being overwhelmed by external commentary. When you move quietly, you reduce the pressure of expectation. You allow growth to stabilize before it is scrutinized. And in this silence, discernment sharpens. You are less likely to chase counterfeit opportunities because you are not trying to impress anyone. You are less vulnerable to ghosts from the past because you are not broadcasting your location to those who once drained you. Silence becomes shield and focus combined. The 3 rules of clearance are not restrictions, they are reinforcements. No looking back protects you from emotional regression. Entering with empty hands frees you from identity distortion. Silent steps guard your momentum from premature disruption. Together, they create a stable platform for sustainable elevation. You have been cleared legally. You have recalibrated biologically. Now you must move strategically. Freedom without wisdom can reopen old wounds. But freedom guided by discipline transforms promotion into permanence. As you step forward under these rules, you will notice something subtle but powerful. Your movements feel steadier. Your decisions feel less reactive. Your progress feels less fragile. Because you are not merely advancing. You are advancing with understanding. And understanding turns clearance into lasting transformation. As you approach the threshold of your new season, understand this clearly: when a primary trap fails, secondary tactics are deployed. The landmine was dismantled. The courtroom verdict was issued. The cloud lifted. But opposition rarely disappears quietly. Instead, it becomes subtle. It becomes psychological. It becomes seductive. What waits at the gate of your promised land is not obvious destruction, but phantom traps designed to make you sabotage yourself. The first of these phantom traps often arrives wrapped in excitement and urgency, and it is the counterfeit opportunity. This offer will look aligned. It will appear to answer your prayers. It may even resemble the very breakthrough you have been waiting for. But hidden inside it will be a small compromise. A boundary you recently learned to protect will be tested. A value you refined during your waiting season will be gently nudged aside. It will not demand a dramatic betrayal of your integrity. It will ask for something subtle. Just one exception. Just one shortcut. Just one overlooked red flag. And here is the mechanism: impatience becomes bait. After enduring delay, you are vulnerable to acceleration that feels immediate. The enemy knows you are tired of waiting, so the counterfeit will tempt you with speed rather than substance. But speed without alignment creates future collapse. The test is not whether the opportunity looks good. The test is whether it honors the boundaries that were forged in your isolation. If it requires compromise to enter, it is not clearance. It is bait. The second phantom trap emerges from familiarity rather than ambition, and it takes the form of the ghost from the past. Just as you begin gaining momentum, just as your frequency stabilizes, someone who once drained you may reappear. An old partner might send a message. A toxic family member may suddenly express renewed affection. A former friend who abandoned you may attempt reconnection. The timing will feel coincidental, but it is not random. When your energy shifts, it is noticeable. Old dynamics sense when they are losing access. These reappearances are not always malicious, but they are often misaligned. The purpose is distraction. The purpose is to pull you back into emotional entanglement just as you are moving forward. Remember, your silence and your recalibration elevated your frequency. Not everyone can ascend with you. Some will attempt to anchor you to the version of yourself they were comfortable controlling. Do not confuse nostalgia with destiny. If they could not honor your growth before, they will not suddenly understand it now. Protect your oil. Protect your focus. Not every reconnection is divine restoration. Some are tests of detachment. The third phantom trap is the most internal and perhaps the most intense, and it manifests as the imposter syndrome spike. Right before your breakthrough becomes visible, you may experience a sudden surge of insecurity. It can feel suffocating. Doubt floods in. Your mind questions your qualifications. You imagine being exposed as inadequate. The timing is not accidental. Panic often spikes at the edge of promotion. The closer you get to visibility, the louder the whisper becomes. But here is the reversal. You must internalize panic at the threshold is not evidence of disqualification. It is evidence of proximity. When the enemy has exhausted external strategies, it attempts internal destabilization. The imposter spike is a tantrum from a system losing control. Smile when it surfaces. Recognize the pattern. Do not negotiate with it. You have already been cleared. The counterfeit opportunity tests your boundaries. The ghost from the past tests your detachment. The imposter spike tests your identity. All three aim to trigger self-sabotage, but awareness disarms them. You do not need to fight dramatically. You simply need to remain aligned. Patience over urgency. Detachment over nostalgia. Confidence over panic. The traps at the gate are illusions. They rely on your reaction to activate. Stay grounded. Stay silent. Stay aligned with the decree, and you will walk past them without losing a step. Once the phantom traps are recognized and resisted, something remarkable begins to unfold, and it does not unfold loudly at first. It unfolds quietly, internally, almost invisibly. Divine acceleration rarely begins with public applause. It begins with alignment. There was a chosen one who encountered this exact turning point not long ago. For nearly 2 years, every effort they made seemed to collapse. Projects stalled, connections dissolved. Doors that looked promising closed without explanation. But when they understood that they were cleared rather than cursed, their strategy changed. Instead of chasing validation, they recalibrated their frequency. They committed to daily theta alignment, even when it felt simple, even when it felt too subtle to matter. 7 minutes each day became sacred. They allowed their nervous system to soften. They adopted silent steps. They deleted distractions. They stopped announcing plans. They stopped explaining their vision to people who could not see it. And for 40 days, nothing dramatic happened on the surface. To outsiders, it appeared as though they had disappeared. Friends assumed they had given up. Critics assumed they had failed. But the hidden season was not regression. It was preparation. There is a reason the number 40 echoes throughout Scripture. 40 days of rain before renewal. 40 years in the wilderness before promise. 40 days of fasting before ministry. 40 marks transition. It marks purification. It marks internal strengthening before external manifestation. In those 40 days, something shifted in that chosen one's internal architecture. Their identity stabilized. Their fear quieted. Their boundaries solidified. They were no longer striving for breakthrough. They were embodying readiness. And then something unexpected happened. Opportunity did not arrive because they forced it. It arrived because they were aligned. A company they had never pitched reached out with an offer that perfectly matched their calling. It was not partial alignment. It was exact. The timing was precise. The compensation exceeded expectation. The blessing did not trickle in. It accelerated. This is the pattern described in Amos 9:13, where it declares that the days are coming when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman and the planter by the one treading grapes. This imagery is agricultural but profoundly spiritual. It describes a suspension of normal timelines. It describes harvest arriving so quickly that the one harvesting collides with the one still planting. Effort and reward compress into proximity. That is what divine acceleration looks like. It does not negate process. It compresses it. The hidden preparation makes visible manifestations swift. When your nervous system is aligned and your steps are disciplined, the environment responds differently. Instead of chasing doors, doors begin to recognize you. Instead of networking anxiously, connections begin to align organically. Instead of forcing harvest, harvest begins to overtake your planting. Blessings start hunting you rather than you hunting them. This does not mean passivity, it means positioning. It means that your internal coherence makes you visible to opportunities calibrated for your frequency. Acceleration is not frantic speed. It is frictionless movement. It is the absence of internal resistance meeting the removal of external opposition. And when both are gone, momentum feels effortless. The 40-day shift is not a superstition. It is a season of recalibration, consolidation, and silent construction. You may not see immediate fireworks, but as you commit to alignment, as you honor the recalibration of your mind and the discipline of silent steps, something is converging. Time is compressing. Effort is aligning with reward. And when the visible shift occurs, it will feel sudden to others, but precise to you. You will recognize that acceleration did not begin at the breakthrough. It began the moment you chose coherence over chaos. And when harvest overtakes planting, you will understand that clearance was never just about survival. It was about preparation for abundance that moves faster than you expected. Up until this moment, you have been receiving instruction, insight, understanding. You have been taught about the hidden trap, the courtroom verdict, the nervous system recalibration, the phantom distractions, and the discipline required for sustainable elevation. But teaching alone is not the destination. Information without activation remains potential. So this is where the shift happens. This is where explanation transitions into commissioning. You are not merely being informed about your clearance. You are being positioned to operate from it. The sealing ceremony activation is not theatrical language. It is a deliberate internal alignment. It is the moment you stop listening passively and begin standing internally with intention. Wherever you are right now, whether sitting quietly or moving through your day, I want you to mentally stand at attention. Not physically rigid, but internally focused. Straighten your posture in your mind. Lift your shoulders in your imagination. This is symbolic, but it is also neurological. Posture influences state. When you align your body with alert calmness, your brain receives the signal that something important is occurring. You are stepping out of the waiting room mentality and into operational readiness. The activation prayer is not a ritual of repetition. It is an operational order. It is the moment where decree meets agreement. Because clearance declared without acceptance can remain dormant. When you align your will with what has already been spoken, you activate it in your lived reality. So internally, acknowledge this: the season of phantom punishment is over. The legal battle has concluded. The emergency brake has been released. Now, as you hold that awareness, imagine the phantom traps at your gate being bound. The counterfeit opportunity loses its shine. The ghost from the past loses its access. The imposter spike loses its intimidation. Not because you are fighting them dramatically, but because you are no longer reacting unconsciously. Awareness neutralizes activation. And now seal the 3 rules of clearance inside your spirit. No looking back becomes emotional detachment from condemned environments. Entering with empty hands becomes freedom from the victim narrative. Silent steps become strategic discipline rather than secrecy rooted in fear. These are not temporary resolutions. They are operational principles for your next chapter. As you internalize this commissioning, understand that time itself is responding. There is a 40-day acceleration window unfolding before you. This is not superstition. It is alignment meeting momentum. When internal recalibration, legal clearance, and disciplined movement converge, time compresses. Seeds planted in obscurity begin surfacing rapidly. Connections align unexpectedly. Doors open without force. Over the next 40 days, remain vigilant, not in fear, but in awareness. Notice synchronicities. Notice invitations. Notice ideas surfacing with clarity. Acceleration does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it begins with subtle shifts that compound quickly. This sealing ceremony is the point of internal agreement. You are not waiting for breakthrough. You are participating in it. You are not hoping clearance becomes visible. You are embodying it. The activation is not about emotion. It is about posture. Stand mentally aligned. Receive the operational order. Walk forward with the understanding that heaven has recorded your readiness. The phantom traps are disarmed. The rules are sealed. The window is open. And what begins quietly in this moment will unfold visibly as you move with discipline, silence, and steady authority. The waiting room has served its purpose. It strengthened you. It refined you. It exposed your resilience and revealed your vulnerabilities. But it was never meant to be your permanent address. You have sat there long enough. You have rehearsed patience. You have endured uncertainty. You have questioned, recalibrated, and matured. And now the announcement echoes clearly: you are dismissed from the waiting room. But dismissal carries responsibility. Clearance is not weightless. It carries gravity. So the final question is not whether you are cleared. That has already been established. The question is whether you will carry the weight of that clearance with maturity. Advancement is a privilege, but it is also stewardship. Will you move forward without looking back? Will you protect your frequency? Will you resist the temptation to shrink when visibility increases? This is not a rhetorical question. It is an internal decision point. Speak it within yourself now. Say yes. Say I am ready. Say I receive my clearance. Verbal agreement matters because it anchors identity. When you articulate readiness, you align your subconscious with your declaration. And understand this: heaven responds to agreement. Your response is not unheard. It is recorded. Not in a mystical ledger of performance, but in the alignment between your will and divine intention. When you say yes, you are not convincing God. You are confirming yourself. You are acknowledging that the season of hesitation is complete. This is where identity shifts. For months, perhaps years, you identified as the one waiting for the shift, the one praying for movement, the one hoping for acceleration. But something has inverted. You are not waiting for the shift anymore. You are the shift. Your internal recalibration is the pivot point. Your disciplined silence is the acceleration mechanism. Your refusal to compromise is the new standard. When you walk into a room, you are not hoping the atmosphere changes. Your alignment changes it. That is the weight of clearance. And before you rush forward with enthusiasm, there is one final instruction that anchors this transition: sit in silence. Not as retreat, but as integration. Allow 60 seconds of intentional stillness. Let the frequency you have been cultivating settle into your nervous system. Feel your breath. Notice your posture. Allow the idea of safety to imprint itself physically. This silence is not empty. It is recalibration. It is where decree becomes embodied reality. In this stillness, your mind rewires. The high beta vigilance softens. Theta clarity settles. Your body begins to trust what your spirit already knows. The war is over. The door is open. The path is clear. When you rise from this moment of silence, do not rise hurried. Rise steady. Rise aware. Rise anchored. Picture yourself stepping out of a dim waiting room into open landscape. The air feels different. The horizon is wide. There is no barrier in front of you. Only space. This is not reckless freedom. It is authorized movement. You are walking into your promised land under divine clearance. Not sneaking in, not forcing entry. Walking, shoulders back, vision clear, boundaries intact, frequency aligned. You are not the same person who entered the waiting room. You are recalibrated, reauthorized, and ready. And as you move forward, remember this: the clearance was granted, the traps were dismantled, the verdict was sealed, and your identity has shifted. You are dismissed from delay. Walk boldly.